Episode 1 of 20, Why PBL is Best for Kids. Skylar was one of my students when I was teaching 8th grade English at a middle school on the southwest side of Indianapolis. Well, 75% free and reduced lunch. Skylar was part of that group, and he did a great job as far as grades from kindergarten to about 3rd grade. And somewhere around 3rd grade, he figured out that if you don't do any of the schoolwork, you're pretty quiet, you still get to hang out with your skater buddies, and you get 2 meals a day. So it's not a bad gig. So that's what he did. He failed pretty much every class well through 7th grade. And then in 7th and 8th grade, we gave him project based learning, connected with service learning, and it created an active learning environment. He was getting this in his 4 core classes. We were starting to give him the why behind his learning, the question he'd always asked and didn't really have a great answer for. And he got it. It clicked. Suddenly he understood why he was learning things. We said, "Hey, Skylar, you have to learn the Punnett square." And he would say, "I don't care." But then we brought in somebody from the Hemophilia Society, and Mike said, "Hey, 8th graders, there are parents that are going to find out their child has a genetic disease. They're going to want to know 2 things. They want to know, is my child going to be okay? And number 2, they want to know everything there is to know about this disease. Hey, 8th graders, would you do this?" And Skylar goes, "I do that. I want to help people." "All right, well, you need to learn the Punnett square in order to do that." "Oh, okay. I guess I'll learn the Punnett square." And he went on to go create, a PSA that went to a doctor's office and did legitimately help parents who just found out their child has a genetic disease. But that like woke Skylar up. Like he found his purpose. And it wasn't in genetic diseases, it wasn't in PSAs, but his sophomore year of high school, he was taking pictures at the bus stop of the sunrise, putting them on Instagram like most high school boys. But he had a little bit of a different flair. His looked a little bit different. He started to get a little following. And he's like, "I kind of like this." He started to learn some things. He went to the library to learn how to create great photos. He got books. He watched YouTube videos. He did all those things that we do as learners. And I was like, "Hey, you never opened up my textbook. Like, what happened to that?" And he would just laugh and say, "Well, now I had a real reason to open it up." And somewhere in high school, he got a DM on his Instagram account that said, "Hey, Skylar, can we use one of your sunset pictures at Time Magazine?" And he said, "Are you messing with me? Is this Ricky?" And he said, "No, sir, this is not Ricky. We'd like to use one of your photos." He said, "Of course." And then he started to get 5,000 followers a day on his Instagram account until he got up to 48,000 followers. So here he is in high school. He's got the blue check mark. And Time Magazine at the time was looking at 2 Instagram accounts at every state in the country. And in your state, it's probably a photojournalist or someone that works for a magazine. In Indiana, it was a kid from generational poverty for like 2 years in a row who self-taught himself, who taught himself how to use a camera and then started putting things up on Instagram. He's just taking pictures of his buddies, Ricky, at a state park and doing whatever it was he really wanted to do. Well, fast forward, he keeps getting traction and now he's got sponsors. He's got sponsors like Coleman Camping Gear. They're sending him cool stuff, and Valvoline Motor Oil actually paid him. So he keeps going. And now he's out in Los Angeles. He's a freelance photographer. He has his own business. He has his own courses. He's working with major rap labels. He's working with Nike, Monster Energy Drink. And he would tell you that the spark was project based learning in middle school, that he became a lifelong learner. He figured out how to learn whatever it is he needed to learn to become successful. Before that, he was just floating along. He had no ambition beyond skating. And it opened up a whole world of opportunity for him and for his younger brother. Really, really neat story. And in Magnify Learning, and as you're going through this PBL binge episode, these are the stories we want to continue to talk about. Skylar is not an isolated incident. We have stories of kids that were couch surfing. They're essentially homeless and now they're architects, right? Like this happens continually where kids wake up to see the intentionality of the world and how they can partake. It's really exciting. So I think every teacher should move to PBL because PBL brings hope to all learners in 3 specific ways. The first way is PBL gives a context for learning, an ecosystem for learning that goes beyond the concepts that we might be looking at in a given project. It goes beyond socioeconomic status, language learners. A lot of our learners feel like they've been stripped of power, that they don't have any choice, or they have these literacy struggles that just creates school as this constant struggle. And the context of PBL fixes some of that, right? The research shows that the reason skill and drill doesn't work in our Title I schools, for instance, is that they don't have the additional handles and context to understand those things that we're skilling and drilling. So there's memorizing, but then you get a different context and they're out of luck. Project-based learning brings in community partners. It brings in an entry event. It brings in all these additional elements of the things they're trying to learn, these contexts, I call them handles, so they can really grab onto the things we're trying to teach them. So those learners you're most trying to reach are the ones that most need PBL. It is a myth, a 100% myth, that your learners have to get the basics before they can move to PBL. It's completely flipped, actually. They need PBL in order to learn the basics. They need that context. The second way that PBL is going to help your learners is that PBL shows them how their work matters. Suddenly, they went from powerless to someone who has impact in their community. Suddenly, they see that their belief, their voice matters. And if you don't think your voice matters, if you're frustrated and you don't think anyone's listening, you do become passive. You shy away. But once you see that your voice matters in a classroom, and then outside of that classroom, you start to be empowered in that classroom. You start to be empowered outside of that classroom. So when we start to show our learners that their work matters, it offers hope, it offers purpose, it fulfills a real need for our learners. And the third way is that PBL introduces our students to slices of life that they might not know exist. They might not have in their top 5 connections, as they look around to aunts, uncles, friends, and neighbors, they might not have engineers or social workers or people in the medical field, someone in law or architecture, someone at Department of Natural Resources. They might not have an entrepreneur in their circle of influence. And when we bring those community partners into the classroom and introduce them to our learners, we know that research, especially I've seen the research around STEM careers, just introducing them to Sam the engineer, to Abigail the lawyer, suddenly say, well, Abigail's a normal person. I could do that. That is the switch. That is what we need our learners to feel and experience. And that's what they get in project-based learning. They may not have known some of these people otherwise, but we believe that PBL changes the world for our students by giving them these introductions they might not have otherwise. PBL gives, PBL shows, and introduces students to a brand new future. Your call to action in this very first episode is go to whatispbl.com. Whatispbl.com. You can find it in the show notes too, and you'll get a free set of resources to get you started. It'll give you another path to go down to learn a little bit more, to get handles on project-based learning. That's what our whole binge podcast is about. Tune in for the next episode to see how PBL can help you love teaching again.